told they don't belong here because they disagree with those in power. I remember an experience like that happening to my father, who came to this country, became a citizen, was passionate about this country, and was once heckled when he was speaking out at a protest by somebody who told him to go home. And he told him, I am home. And he was. He built, along with my mother, a family in our part of Indiana. And it is often those who are newest to this country who have such a vivid sense of what it means to be an American because they chose to be American. Then again, most of the people the president is talking about were born right here. Bottom line is, wherever you were born, we ought to afford a certain level of respect, especially to every American elected official speaking out about their values. And, you know, the idea of questioning somebody's belonging because they are questioning those in power, that's something that has a long and dark history in this country, and it's something we ought to put behind us.
Do you think that tweet was racist?
Yes, I do.
How are you trying to differentiate yourself from other candidates, especially in Iowa?
Well, part of what's helped us cut through the clutter, I think, is that we have a message that really goes to the deepest values that motivate progressive policies. Not only do we talk about the policies, but we talk about how reclaiming the language of things like freedom and security, conversation about faith, is appropriate and very progressive. I think part of it's also just having a different tone and a different style. And people are ready for something different because they're so tired of what we've got in the White House now, but also aware that some of what we've seen across basically the whole time I've been alive, from Republicans and Democrats, hasn't really spoken to the needs of our part of the country or a lot of communities around the U.S.
How do you in particular appeal to rural voters?
Well, I think a lot of it is letting rural voters know how they can be part of the solution on issues from climate change to economic empowerment. It's not any one issue. It's not just ag. It's not just broadband, although these things matter. It's also painting a picture of what it looks like for parents and grandparents to know that their kids and grandkids could have a future in the communities where they grew up. And I think we can absolutely deliver that, but not if we keep going down the road of the policies we have today.
Mayor, I know that whole show that you've been struggling with black voters. I know you released the plan not too just a few days ago. Are you doing anything else to do this?
Yeah, so we're getting fantastic feedback on the Douglas plan to deal with racial inequality in America. But just because we've written up a good plan, that's not enough if I'm not out there reaching out and getting to know different audiences and sharing what we plan to do. We've had a fantastic response to that plan, whether we're talking about it with majority white audiences or whether we're going to places like the Essence Festival in New Orleans or talking about it at Rainbow Push in Chicago. We're going to continue taking this message across the country because I believe it's the right one and a winning one. The most important thing is demonstrating that we get that just replacing racist policies with neutral ones isn't going to be enough for us to reverse the harms caused by systemic racism.
Mayor, I'm curious, the caucuses are February, it's very long way from now, and a lot of candidates come here and confidently said, I can deliver something that the other candidates can't. At some point, do you think that some of these candidates who aren't polling very well should consider dropping out of the race?
Yeah, it's not for me to say when another candidacy should end, but I do think that the process will play out. It's healthy for now to have as many voices as possible. I think some will fall away and support will start to consolidate, but for me, in order to get the nomination, I've got to focus on making sure that our support base grows, and it's why now that the get-to-know-you phase is in the past, we're entering the phase of really making sure our whole organization is built out across this state and other early states so that voters get to know us in not just an introductory sense, but really seeing what our campaign is about, watching our campaign model the values that I want to lead America with, and doing that kind of unglamorous field work that really makes it possible to win caucuses and primaries. Well, the reception's incredibly warm. I remember doing this event a couple of years ago, and people were nice then, but it's a dramatic change over those 2 years as we've shared more about this message, and I think as people have started looking at their options and realizing the ways that I'm not like the others. Of course, it is early. This is a marathon, and so we're pleased about having been able to reach the tier that we're in, but we're under no illusions that our work is done. We got a lot of work to do to get to number one, stay there, and win the caucuses and the primaries ahead.
To follow up, you're a unique candidate. You're the first on a number of fronts.
Can you step back and say you're surprised at the reception overall you've gotten so far in entering this race?
Certainly the speed of it has been surprising. We thought it would be more of a slow burn. But that's it's a good challenge, because now what it means is we've got to build that kind of ground game to match the kind of national attention that's come our way. The bottom line is it validates the idea that we have the right message and messenger. Now we've got to organize to bring it all the way through the finish line. No, I think polls become very meaningful about 5 to 10 days away from the election. Until then, they're giving you a very broad, very vague sense of where folks are at. But the bottom line is the president is deservedly unpopular. I think it'll stay that way, but he could still absolutely win if we look like we're just promising a return to normal or a reversion to the very situations that so many Americans have been rebelling against. I think it's time for a different message, because what we have now, in my view, represents not just an election for a new president, but the beginning of a new era. And that era could be enlightened or it could be ugly. That depends on the choices we make right now. Well, it's part of why I talk about values that I think should unite us as Americans. We also need to talk about results. Part of how I've done unusually well with conservatives and independents where I live is not pretending to be more conservative than I am. It's focusing on how our decisions are going to affect everyday life. And right now, if people look around their everyday lives, they see their health care threatened by the United States Congress and this president. They see what's happening when wages stagnate as the wealth created by our country over the last 40 years goes into the hands of a tiny few. They see how we are being divided and pitted against each other by a president whose conduct is offensive, not just to progressive values, but to conservative values. And it's a great opportunity, probably the best we've had in my lifetime, for Democrats to make inroads with conservative and independent-leaning voters. I meet so many Republicans who are horrified by what's being done in the name of their party. I think now's our opportunity to remind them that they have a choice and to talk about what American life might be like if we had a different vision of freedom, democracy, and security.
You mentioned earlier about how rural people have to be part of the solution. How do you plan on having rural America